energy all at the same time. So both players are going to have, positive different cards on them that'll give them the edge, but that red card in the extra Hex Maniac really could end up putting a big dent in James's strategy at the end of the day.
And then over on the other side of the table, we've got James Taylor also running more or less a straight Zoroark necklace. Oh, and it looks like we've got start of the action right here. So have
James is actually opening with Seismitoad EX. He decides to put a double colorless energy down. Now, we have seen a lot of Enhanced Hammer flowing around this weekend. Not as much as I honestly expected with all the Puzzle of Time. But with that being said, players are feeling more comfortable putting these double colorless down on the first turn. James, after that double colorless, just see an end from him. So hoping to kind of find, not his ideal supporter on the first turn. Definitely usually wants to play a Bridget to be able to get a couple zeros and stuff in play, get his board and everything running, but hopefully he's able to find a couple zeros or something off this end for himself.
That's right, and to put it into perspective for exactly how unlucky having to start with this N is, looking at all the different outs that James had to being able to get that Bridget, he has Tapu Lele GX, Undertag to be able to fetch Bridget, he has Ultra Balls to grab Tapu Lele GX, he has Pokemon Communication, he has so many different ways. When you add everything up, that's about 12, 13, maybe even more cards that can get you to that Bridget, and unfortunately he has a Bridget in his hand, but it's a turn too late, so he's definitely going to be a little stunted in his setup this game.
You would at least see an Ultra Ball coming out of that, so he can at least get a single copy of Zorua down. Not the best, but also not the worst. You want to make sure you can at least get one Zoroark GX on the following turn. But I really do like that Seismitoad EX opening from James. It will have Isaiah playing his couple early turns completely different because he has to play around that Seismitoad EX or put himself in a position that he can take it out from his opponent as fast as he can.
Exactly. And so now we move over to Isaiah's side of the looks like. So he's going to play Battle Compressor, and not exactly sure what the 3 targets will be. Lets you search your deck for up to 3 cards to automatically put into your discard pile. And this is a very deep card because you have a lot of decision making, a lot of big decisions and a lot of little decisions where there are a couple cards that are going to be very obvious at certain points, but sometimes it might be a little hard to choose the third one. So at any rate, it looks like Isaiah is opening up 2 Execute and a Hex Maniac. So remember, Isaiah runs 2 copies of Hex Maniac, so not only will he be able to free that one spot up for being able to be fetched by VS Seeker, but he could use Tapu Lele's Wonder Tag at some point later on the game to fetch the other, depending on how things pan out, because in order to win the mirror match, being able to stop your opponent from trading is very, very helpful.
Absolutely. Now, we do see the Ultra Ball coming down from Isaiah, which, interestingly enough, James opted to not play his Ultra Ball on that first hand. So he's not going to be able to get a Zoroark out on his second turn here. Isaiah does get to use Tapu Lele to use Wonder Tag, possibly going for a Bridget of his own. So Isaiah is definitely off to a better start than James so far. He does have that Seismitoad that'll try to throw a little bit of a wrench in it, but if Isaiah's able to get a bunch of Zoroarks in play while James is just sitting there with a Seismitoad and, a couple Lele's or anything, James is going to have a little bit of a rough time combating that setup.
Well, Mike, the really fascinating interaction between these two players right now is that James and his opponent, so they got new hands, and Isaiah is going with his typical default turn 1 of Bridget, setting up Pokemon, putting them straight onto his bench. But what has effectively happened is, although in a way James may have lost a turn, it really isn't that bad for him because effectively now it's almost as if he is going second, even though he won the flip and he started the game.
Right.
So it's not exactly like, unless Isaiah has a double colorless energy to be able to paralyzing gaze on that Seismitoad X to stop the item lock.
I mean, I gotta say, I would really like to see that from Isaiah's side, because at that point, like you said,
Puzzle of Time right now, so he's going to be digging those out, digging a couple cards out from his discard pile. The Hex that he grabbed with his Battle Compressor and an Ultra Ball.
Interesting enough to see those puzzle times coming down on your first turn. So, I mean, he really wants to be able to go for something here that he felt confident he needed to use the puzzles of time. At the same time, he also could just be doing it because he knows that Seismitoad EX is on the board, and they're going to become a useless card next turn, especially if he's going to be playing something like a Professor Sycamore. Now, Isaiah, though, he did end up grabbing a Shaman EX there, which is telegraphing possibly a Skyfield.
There is a Skyfield in his hand, which he just played down, so it looks like he's going to keep on digging through the deck. keep on trying to
Oof.
find whatever he can. And he got
Oh, he got
three
three
double
double
colorless
colorless
energy in a row.
So he wanted one. I don't know that he wanted as many as he got, but it is pretty nice because you gotta feel pretty confident, Isaiah. If you put that double colorless onto the active Zorua, the only really way that it's gonna get knocked out or have you lose that double colorless energy is if your opponent uses something like Energy Drive from a Tapu Lele.
We have something really funny going on right here where he's trying to adjust his bench because of the Skyfield. Remember, when Skyfield is in play, you can have up to 8 spots for bench Pokemon, so it gets a little awkward at times. You have to maybe finagle where you put your Pokemon, and sometimes it looks like you might even need 2 different rows of basic Pokemon.
Right, and this is actually really really a just wonderful start from Isaiah because besides the fact that he's got the Skyfield, he's got the Sudowoodo already in play, which is going to limit James's bench down to getting no more than four Pokemon on the bench. So he's not going to be able to take advantage of that Skyfield. And if James does decide to get rid of the Skyfield with his copy of, actually, yes, he does play a copy of Field Blower. So if he does decide to
and he
bump
just got
it,
the tails on the Paralyzing Gaze, so that Seismitoad, if James wants to, he's going to be able to get off that Quaking Punch and that Paralysis, so James has a very weak turn, relatively. This is going to be a construction turn, and by that I mean he's going to be getting more Pokemon into play. It's not so much about big hits, it's just getting set up and getting exactly what he needs for future turns.
Right. And Isaiah using that second Tapu Lele last turn, despite not needing another supporter, knowing that there's a good chance that James is going to put down his own copy of Sudowoodo this turn, so he's gotten to be able to use these Tapu Leles, and Sudowoodo, all it's going to do is just bump the 2 Leles and the Shaman right off the bench. So I was kind of falling right into what Isaiah wanted. He almost wants that Sudowoodo to hit the board and roadblock those off the board so that James doesn't have an easy 2 prizes on the Shaman or the Tapu Lele either. Bridget does come down for James. So even though it's not the first turn, like you said earlier, John, it's kind of like he just went second. So he does end up getting 2 Zoruas of his own. He does get the roadblock out, knocking off the 2 Tapu Leles and the Shaman. And I don't really know what else is going to happen besides, of course, his punch here. But he's at least going to be playing an Ultra Ball to possibly go for maybe another Zorua, maybe the Alolan Grimer. The good thing about having the Alolan Muck and your opponent not having it is you get to control when to turn off that roadblock. So until that Alolan Muck comes down, there's no way a Zoroark GX is ever going to be able to take a one-shot. So the moment that you get to play the Alolan Muck down, you say, all right, I'm taking the knockout this turn. Sure, you can do the same thing too, but...
And there it goes, the Alolan Grimer down onto the bench. So Power of Alchemy, the ability on Alolan Muck, will be an option this game. Lets you shut off the abilities on the basic Pokemon that both players have in play, so it's a little bit of a risk-reward where there's some abilities you might not be able to use. You may be wondering, well, this deck has so many great basic Pokemon with abilities. There's Tapu Lele GX, there's Execute from Plasma Freeze. Why would I let that happen? Why would I do that? Well, Sudowoodo is really important. When roads are blocked, you got to find some way to break through them.
Absolutely. We've known that for a long time with good old Snorlax and Pokeflutes, but we do see the first Zoroark GX hitting the board for Isaiah. Trade is going to be activated, letting him draw a couple cards.
Looks like a lot of trades are going to get activated in a bit.
It's pretty great when you trade and you trade into the other Zoroark, so you can just do it again. But he hits a Computer Search and actually one of the Mind Jack Zoroarks off of that, so Isaiah can definitely put a lot of damage onto this Seismitoad this turn if he wants.
Yeah, that was actually really big for Isaiah because normally when you're trying to get multiple Zoroark GXs into play so you get multiple trades, you usually have other things you can rely on, like Ultra Ball, and in some lists, Evo Soda or Pokemon Communication. But here, Isaiah needed to hit Zoroark GX directly because he is suffering the item lot.
Right. So knowing that he can't play that copy of Computer Search, well...
Or I might be wrong.
No, he used Quaking Punch.
Okay, no, I'm better not second guess myself.
No, he definitely used Quaking Punch, but it looks like Isaiah realized quickly that, no, I cannot play this Computer Search, so he put it back into his hand, so that way, we don't have to worry about any penalties or anything like that whatsoever.
It's good.
Definitely not something you want to see once you're actually out to the Final Four. It does happen. It's been a long day. It's easy for simple mistakes like that to be played, but it's good to be able to catch them before they become out of hand.
That's right. Now, the unfortunate thing about doing that is that James is on notice that Isaiah has a Computer Search, so while that's not too big of a deal right now, James is kind of aware that if Isaiah is going to have items, he's going to be able to have a really big turn. He'll be able to trigger a lot of things. He'll be able to get a lot of Pokemon into play. So the moment that he lets go of the item lock, or the moment that he doesn't end, is when Isaiah's list is going to explode.
Right. And we are going to see, it looks like Isaiah is contemplating this Hex Maniac, which will turn off both roadblocks for the turn, but it's also going to mean that James isn't going to be able to trade next turn either. So, pros and cons of both. I don't really see James being able to take advantage of the roadblock being turned off by too much. He's kind of already got the 4 Pokemon that he wants on his bench either way, so I don't really see him doing too much to replace it.
Right. However, right now, Isaiah's setup is stabilized, but James's is not so much. So by losing that access to trade, he's effectively set back several turns, maybe. So without any way to trade, he's still waiting on more resources, and so he's just stuck using Quaking Punch again.
Quaking Punch again. So, I mean, it is going to be, probably keeping that computer search shut off. But the Zoroark GX, even though with the roadblock there, he's still two-shotting, 2-hit knocking out this Seismitoad EX. He did put 100 damage on it this turn. So, James decides that he wants to go for the Quaking Punch again. He's offering his opponent 2 prizes up by doing so. And sure, the Zoroark GX will have 60 damage on it by that point, but I don't know if it's necessarily enough, because you really get, that's still going to be 20 damage short of a knockout with Roadblock still active. Now, he does have the option, of course, like I said, he has that Alolan Muck, so at any point, once James says, I'm ready, he can drop that Alolan Muck into play, turn the Skyfield off, but James says, for now, all I'm going to do is Quaking Punch again, put that Zoroark up to 60 damage, and, try to stop the item.
That's all you get, yeah. Woo! So, right now, James effectively had a non-turn part thanks to that Hex Maniac, and Isaiah is like, well, you know what, I don't have items, so I don't have the full turn that I want, but this is my approach to Mirror. I have a lot of really helpful things for the Mirror matchup, so go ahead and work with what we have. Now, currently Isaiah is going through the motions with his deck. You have 3 trades available to him this turn. Discard to draw, discard to draw, discard to draw. So he's basically giving himself a new hand every time that he does that.
Right. And he actually just drew the 3rd Zoroark GX right off the top of the deck. So again, finding all these Zoroarks without access to items, pretty impressive from Isaiah's side. Definitely, if you're James, you've got to feel a little bit uncomfortable. You were hoping that this Quaking Punch is going to put a little bit of a dent in Isaiah's setup, but it doesn't really seem to have done too much.
Oh, and it looks like he's dropping the double onto Zoroark from Breakthrough, so at any point, Isaiah will be able to stand in and mind jack his opponent, so that Seismitoad is softened up a little bit, so there are multiple ways that Isaiah could score this knockout this turn. He could use Riotous Beating to get the knockout. He could bring up the Zoroark from Breakthrough to potentially get it, because Mind Jack would do 130 damage right now, and that might be what he's going with here, so he's got the stand-in.
This is definitely an interesting play. I'd really like to see where it takes him. I liked the idea of having that Zoroark on the bench, Zoroark active, or excuse me, on the bench ready, so that if James does decide to use the Alolan Muck, he has something that can kind of keep his opponent in check. If he decides to try to overfill his bench, he'll have the Mind Jack there ready to take a one-hit knockout. Effectively, he could have just used his Zoroark GX to take a knockout there, but this way he's not risking his Zoroark GX that already had 60 damage on it to being able to take any kind of knockout whatsoever. Definitely like to see where this play goes.
Exactly, and positive here by bringing that Zoroark from Breakthrough out is that if James is able to get any knockout this turn, doesn't involve a Guzma bringing up one of those GXs and dealing a whole bunch of damage all at once, which is not really that easy to do when you A, need to draw a bunch of cards, and B, shut off your opponent's roadblock to be able to do it. James is thinking, well, you know what? I guess I'm stuck maybe having to knock out either the roadblock Sudowoodo at some point or knocking out the active Breakthrough Zoroark, and that's exactly what Isaiah wants, because James would only be drawing a single prize, and at that point, Isaiah's like, well, I can just charge straight ahead, full steam ahead, no problem, and score maybe even 2-3 knockouts to seal the game. Remember, we've got GXs in play, which is worth 2 prizes, so Isaiah is not only in the lead, but if James is going to be able to get a knockout this turn, then he might be in a pretty vulnerable spot.
Right. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be able to happen. He's going to need a lot to be able to actually take that knockout. But Isaiah at that point, because he's losing, if he loses his Mind Jack this turn and his opponent decides to put that Alola Muck into play, he's going to need quite a few basic Pokemon of his own to be able to fill up his bench and get around his own
Oh, and it
field.
looks like we've got a Getsus coming down, so assuming that James is going to play and he's not just thinning out his deck for some reason, he's going to get a peek at Isaiah's hand and shuffle back all items from Isaiah's hand back into his deck and draw that same number of cards. So this could maybe turn things around. Tough to see. Tough to say. We'll just go ahead and have to see how things pan out as far as
Right.
what cards get shuffled in and what James draws.
It's going to be quite a few. There's about 6, 7 items in there. This is always a really great follow-up to a Seismitoad EX. You know your opponent's hand's got to have at least some items. He hasn't been able to play them, so unless he plays some shuffle draw, you can expect to find a few in that hand that you're going to be able to utilize. And I don't know exactly how many it was. I believe it was 8 that he's actually drawing off of that Getsus. I mean, that's probably one of the best draw cards that you could possibly play in that scenario. Just a fresh draw 8 right off the top.
And then we had that computer search coming back to maybe fight Isaiah a little bit because by accidentally flashing that card to James, James was on notice that there was at least one item, so James knew without a shadow of a doubt that there was going to be a single item in Isaiah's hand, and instead he got about 7 or 8.
Right. So, I mean, again, little mistakes like that can really cost you in the end. But from James' side, let's see if he's able to actually get that Alola Muck out into play, along with, well, I mean, he actually still needs the Zoroark GX before he can even worry about that. So, I see he's got all 3 copies of Zoroark GX still in his deck, so he didn't draw into one on his own. And while going through, I'm not really sure if I saw the Alola Muck, which means it might actually be in his prize cards.
Yeah, although also going through their lists, that's the subtle difference between these two decks right now, where Isaiah runs 4 Zoroark GX, James runs 3. Both of these players are obviously doing fantastic. However, in this one situational spot right here, it makes a huge difference that Isaiah has 4 as opposed to 3, because he was under item lock. He needed to draw into those Zoroark GXs directly. He gave himself better odds to do it. And meanwhile, James, even though he's never been under item lock this whole game, he's looking for multiple Zoroark GXs, and it's a little bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, he does end up playing the computer search right after that Ultra Ball, so he's gotten to put in 2 new cards and everything in his hand. Looks like he's eyeing that Zoroark GX to be able to get it into play. I mean, without Zoroark GX, I mean, your deck doesn't really function. It's the heart of the deck. It's what you need to get out.
Well,
so far, he's had a little trouble doing
if you hit a heads, that Paralyzing Gaze functions a little bit, but that's not really the type of function you want. That's kind of like a half function.
Yeah, that's just kind of, what you're doing to stall a little bit of time because you're waiting for the Big Papa to come walking in the door. So it looks like James is going. He did end up grabbing the Zoroark GX there, so he's not sure what he grabbed off of the other one as well. We're going to be able to see how much he's actually.
Oh, and we've got the double puzzle of time coming down, so James will be able to get 2 new cards, or in this case, 2 old cards, because we've seen these played before.
And it's always great to see that when you play more than one computer search in a turn. You know something's going right for you that turn.
Exactly. Now, the nice thing about Ace Specs is that unlike GX attacks, it's not a once per game thing. You can use the same Ace Spec over and over and over again if you find a way to get it back. And the great thing about the expanded format is that there are so many ways to get cards back. There's Sablei's Junk Hunt from Dark Explorers, which lets you get 2 items back and put them into your hand. And as you can see right here in both lists, we've got Puzzle of Time to help you get those back. So we've got second computer search going on, which is pretty cool.
Right. It's not too often that you see 2 of them happen in the same turn and everything here. But, a couple different ways it will pull off.
It's like he's getting the Foul Play Zoroark from Black and White and other sets, so he looks like he is answering Isaiah's non-EX, non-GX with a non-EX, non-GX of his own.
He's going to be able to copy Mind Jack, which with the 4 bench will be more than enough to actually knock out this Zoroark as well. He does end up having his own Zoroark GX and everything now on the bench, so at least he has access to 1 trade and everything going forward. Again, interesting enough, because if he had left that Zoroark GX up active last turn, I don't know that James would have been able to actually take this knockout. But it does seem, so the Alola Muck is definitely not prized. He's able to grab it now if he really wants. So, yeah, but I'm not so sure. See that?
He doesn't want to open it up to.
Right.
He doesn't want to let the floodgates out.
Right.
He wants to keep that roadblock.
Right. So, putting it in your hand is one thing. It is off a computer search, so you don't actually have to reveal it to your opponent on what you're actually
It looks
choosing.
like he's eyeing his shaman, but he's still trying to juggle everything between roadblock and his own power of alchemy that could shut it off. So
Right, he's going to go to his hand. He cannot actually bench it just yet because of the roadblock. We see a floatstone actually coming down onto the Alolan Grimer. Stop.
shaman, yep, there we go.
They did catch it, so thing that both players have been able to make sure that they catch things before they actually become too critical.
Right.
So, but,
that's right. Now, hypothetically, if one of these situations progressed even further, it could have been a big deal, and it could have led to some serious penalties. It could have led to some gameplay errors. But everything's okay. Don't worry. It's all right.
We've got some great judging staff here at Dallas Regionals. Definitely want to give a shout out to them. We've had some great stream judges that have been working with us all day. So fantastic work from them overall. Catching wonderful areas. We've had a pretty flawless stream in terms of, gameplay errors, deck checks, and this, that, and the other. Really great staff that we've been able to work with here.
It's like we've got that one copy of Pokemon Communication coming down. If you don't recognize that card, it's actually been out of the standard format for a while. If you have a Pokemon in your hand, you shuffle it back in, and in exchange you get to search your deck for a new Pokemon, any Pokemon of your choice. And so that's exactly what James is doing. He wants to conserve his resources a little bit, even though I think he might have 2 Execute in his discard pile already.
He does.
But he still wants to play that to get the Pokemon. And he's still thinking about, and he evolves it. He gets Power of Alchemy out. And
put the muck in play. This is, again, a very interesting play, and I'm really excited to kind of see how it actually ends up working out for James in that fashion. Isaiah actually making the right play last turn. He actually propagated both of his executes into his hand and left them there, kind of expecting that Alolan Muck to hit the board at some point, and he didn't want them to get stuck in his discard pile, so that way he's able to counter. Now, James, by playing that Alolan Muck down, this actually gives Isaiah the opportunity to be able to put down as many things he wants on his own bench, so he can actually Guzma and take a knockout on that Zoroark GX on the bench if he really wants to. And if he has a Guzma in the discard pile, he's got enough Pokemon in his hand. He has that knockout, I believe. He doesn't have the choice band, I don't think.
Yeah, so it looks like we've got the trade here. Now,
and there's the choice band that he needed.
So he's got the choice band. If he's got enough basics, then he could be able to pull it off. He needs enough basics. He needs the Guzma to bring in one of the GXs out.
He's got 5 basics in his hand, and he's
got he's gunning for it. It definitely looks like he's angling for it to happen.
Oh boy!
And notice that he's sitting on that red card. Now you've seen that pop up a couple times throughout the weekend. Red card is an item card that shuffles your opponent's hand back into their deck. Draw a new hand of exactly 4 cards, and in the mirror match, especially with Isaiah playing so many Hex Maniacs and Hex Maniac outs and ways to get Hex Maniac, it's really helpful when your mirror opponent is trying to build up their hand, trying to build up their resources, and then you're just like, oops, red card, now a 4-card hand instead of a 20-card hand, and you're in a pickle.
Yep, and we do see the Battle Compressor coming down, putting that Guzma in the discard pile. Isaiah Williams still has one other trade left that he is able to use. He has a couple different things he can do here. He has a guaranteed knockout on the Tapu Lele on the bench. I believe he needs one more basic Pokemon.
That's a tough trade to discard a choice band.
Oh, he does have one already on board.
That's right.
He doesn't really need to worry about it. If he got another basic off that, he did get an Ultra Ball. He has the ability.
And he's playing the red card, so
James is going to go down to 4 cards. He doesn't have to use a supporter for the turn, which means Isaiah can choose to use a Via Seeker for Colress, for Guzma. He can actually also Via Seeker for the Getses after his opponent goes down to 4 cards. Take a look, take a peek at what his 4 cards are, shuffle away these items. Theoretically, you could even put James at a 0-card hand at that point.
Exactly. It's a little bit of revenge for earlier from the last turn when James gets his sim for $1 million.
So I'm really curious to see what the rest of Isaiah's turn is going to be looking like here. Definitely want to see how this ends up playing out. Does he go for the Tapu Lele? Does he go for the Zoroark, or is he just going to end up going for that Getsus?
Via Seeker, so we'll get your question answered very soon.
Yeah, let's go for it. So he's holding a hand of nothing but double colorless and Ace Rolla. Alolan Muck is on the board, so that's going to stop James from being able to use something like Tapu Lele or Shaman to be able to help himself out of that situation. He's only going to have that one trade and nothing more to be able to try to get past this hand.
Exactly, and it looks like Isaiah, because he played the VS Seeker for the Getsus, he is going to be able to get a knockout with that really without any trouble at all, because he's got the basic Pokemon in his hand. All he needs is to just bench one of them and get
Oh,
up
yeah.
to at least 100 HP, so that's not an issue. What is an issue, though, is how that's going to have a longer effect on the game, because by doing that, assuming that Power of Alchemy goes away at some point, then he may lose access to the Execute if he benched it. However, that's not an issue because he's got no Oricorio. So
Right.
just bench that. It's not going to be useful for the matchup unless James has a ton of Pokemon in his discard pile.
Which, may end up happening. He may be able to. I could see him getting to 10, and you can maybe take out that Sudowoodo or something pesky on the bench. But overall, so James does use the first trade, discarding that Acerola. So we knew his one other card was double colorless energy. Plus, he has 3 others that Isaiah is unsure of at this point. But one of them now just revealed itself, so there's only 2 cards in James's hand that Isaiah does not know what they are. So Isaiah's got to feel pretty comfortable. He's in a position right now with Power of Alchemy shutting down both roadblocks. He's got a pretty large hand to be able to work with for the following turn. He should be able to take a knockout in the following turn and put himself at the very least at 2 prizes.
And what's even worse for James is that because he is out of any basic abilities he can use as long as that Power of Alchemy is in play, being able to get to that magic 210 damage number with Zoroark GX is that much harder. So, Ritus Beating, 210, normally you need to play a lot of cards to be able to get to that point. So we've got the Battle Compressor for, looks like Execute, Aaron, and was that a second Execute or something else?
I believe it was something else. I don't know if it was a second Execute. Interesting that he is choosing to put the Executes in his discard pile, knowing that he's probably never going to be able to take them out. So he's kind of limiting the amount of basics that he's going to have in his deck to really use for Riotous Beating.
Lele here, so I don't know if that's just going to be a sacrifice or if it's going to
I could see it using Energy Drive. I don't think he's only got one Zoroark GX. I would feel very uncomfortable if I was James promoting that Zoroark GX and giving my opponent a free shot at it and a potential knockout.
Well, if I were James just in general, I'd feel really uncomfortable right now because effectively I am behind by at least a turn because my opponent has drawn 2 more prizes than me in a matchup where both of us are playing many cards that are worth 2 prizes. So Isaiah is definitely in the driver's seat here. However, because of that Alolan Muck being in play, there can be some pretty interesting interactions where if James ends Isaiah, then could be forced to discard valuable resources in order to be able to dig out of it.
Right, because of the actual Power of Alchemy and everything. So Isaiah does use his first couple trades. He does use all 3 of them at this point. He's got a fairly large hand. He's got a lot of resources. He's going to be able to take out this Tapu Lele. He's got a Computer Search in his hand. He's got a few Ultra Balls. Now, sure, he's not going to be able to use all of his Executes to discard and get them right back if he really wants. But he's got a pretty big hand, so he's definitely got enough cards to discard to play as many of them as he wants.
And there he is getting that Execute, probably for a little bit of extra fuel for Riotous Beating, if not now, later.
He's got 2 Executes already in his hand, so with that being a third one, he only needs either one other Pokemon on the bench or to promote the one with Choice Band, and he's already got access to being able to take a knockout.
And he's securing for the Guzman, so he's going to bring up that opposing Zoroark GX. It is the only one in James's field. Look at that. He's just flashing all of his bench Pokemon. That's exactly 210 damage. 8 benched, 1 Choice Band, Riotous Beating for 210.
What a commanding play from Isaiah Williams, doing that perfect number right there for that 210. The Guzman, putting him down to 1 prize card, like 6 or 7 cards left in his deck. James has so little time and such a small window. He's really going to have to think out of the box here to be able to kind of pull this off. I mean, I could almost even see something like a Guzman Bunnelby play to try to mill out. Like, I don't expect him to really be able to.
There we go.
He just decided, he's like, I'm just going to promote, but this is a KC. So Isaiah Williams takes the first game of the series, top 4. He's already up his first game. I mean, this has got to be crazy. I can only imagine what's running through his mind. He started from the beginning. James had a slow start. Isaiah capitalized on it as quickly as he could, played around James's Seismitoad EX very, very well, using Puzzle of Time and everything else that he had as his resources, and was able to take his 6 prizes pretty decisively.
Exactly. You basically had a domino effect where by the little tiny things happening throughout the game, Isaiah was able to slowly get ahead at the start, and then the longer the game went on, the more and more and more that he pulled ahead. So you guys noticed that at first they started relatively evenly. On the first turn or 2, James is like, oh, well, it's really no big deal. I mean, I'm Quaking Punching him. I'm setting up. He's setting up. But Isaiah's like, nope, Zoroark, Zork, Zork, Zork.
Right.
And eventually he gets all the Zork that he needs to be able to set up, overwhelm his opponent, and take the game.
Right. And looking at Isaiah's list, I mean, that almost could be what we see for the majority of the series because the way his list is designed and engineered, it's meant to be as consistent as it possibly can. It does have that fourth copy of Zorak GX, like we mentioned earlier. It does have a second copy of Battle Compressor to be able to find your executes and everything. He may not play the Alolan Muck, but he's substituted for a lot of little cards that'll add some extra consistency so that he's able to kind of fluidly just go through the motions, get his Zoraks up and running, and be able to just kind of run through his opponent at full speed.
And that's the thing about Zorak GX Mirror is that you don't always have to have this clear-cut interaction between cards to win the mirror. You can do something a little bit more outside the box where you don't have to always run Alolan Muck. Remember, there are other ways to be able to get more benched Pokemon. The idea is that you need to be able to, right times, get enough Pokemon under your bench in order to be able to do enough damage. So it's okay sometimes if your bench gets limited in the mirror match.
So James should be going first in this match at this point. He does have a Zorua that he can open with. He was kind of contemplating, it looks like, opening with that Bunnel because it could make for some cheeky early plays. Isaiah did actually end up opening up with his one copy of Oricorio, so not the best start, but when you're going second, you're kind of fine with it because it's just something that's going to be active. So if James does try to take a cheap knockout with Zorak GX on his second turn, it's only going to be on an Oricorio without using something like Guzma. Wonder Tag does come down, Tapu Lele does come down using its Wonder Tag ability to grab a supporter. Looks like he's going to be going for the Bridget. So a little bit of a better start from James than he had last game. He's able to get the Bridget on the first turn as opposed to the second. We'll see a couple Zorua, I imagine, come into play here. Maybe a Sudowoodo or the Alolan Grimer. One or the other I can only imagine is going to be hitting this board to be able to make sure that he has different ways of disrupting Isaiah throughout this match.
And if I'm not mistaken, unless it is in his hand, then James has one of his Zorua's prize. So we talked about domino effects before in this mirror match where the whole idea, even if you don't know how to play Pokemon, is if you've been watching this long enough, you know, oh, okay, well, if there are a lot of Zorak GXs in play, then it's probably winning. So the more evolution Pokemon you see, the more likely they're winning. Well, the downside about having one in those 6 prize cards, random cards, is that James is going to have access to fewer resources later on. He's not going to be able to do cute things like that foul play as easily, and he's ultimately not going to be able to get as many cards because that might even mean fewer trades throughout the rest of the match.
Right. I mean, while also going through that Bridget, I also believe that his Sudowoodo was prized. I did not see it while going through, and it's a pretty easy card to spot because it's one of the only fighting cards in there, and he said that's going to make a big difference on the match if that's correct.
Well, you know what? I just said that myself. I just said, oh, that's a big deal. And you know what? I think there is some truth to that to an extent. But at the same time, James is already kind of prepared for that. And that's part of the reason why he went for that Alolan Grimer as soon as he could. Because Isaiah might be going for his own Sudowoodo. And then James can immediately be like, oh, Alolan Muck, I'm good.
Right. So he can definitely make sure that he doesn't allow his opponent to be able to use for it. And there is that roadblock coming in right there, so it is set up. The roads are closed. James is going to make sure that he gets out Alolan Grimer as quick as he can so that he is not left out of the loop. But he is already at a full bench, so unless he already has his supporters and everything in his hand, he's not going to be able to use Tapu Lele or Shaman to be able to get to the cards he's looking for.
He can have his. It's not going to happen this game because it seems like James's Sudowoodo is prized, but Oricorio is a ghost bird Pokemon, so tell me, is that ghost going through the wall, or is it flying over?
I don't know. I'm going to say flying over it. Oricorios, they do like to fly in packs, so I'm going to go with flying over it. Going through, Isaiah is going to be able to bench a 5th Pokemon due to the lack of Sudowoodo there, but again we see that double Tapu Lele play on his first turn, even though he knows he can only play one supporter at a time, because he's making sure in case James does play his copy of Sudowoodo. Of course, Isaiah has no idea that James has the Sudowoodo prize, if that's actually the case, so he wants to make sure he gets full advantage out of it while he still can.
He actually has multiple incentives to play that Wonder Tag for the Colress because not only is he potentially afraid of Roadblock, there's Power of Alchemy, which shuts off the abilities of the basic Pokemon as we talked about, and there's always Hex Maniac, which is, as we've said millions of times before already a big deal in the mirror match.
Absolutely.
So James is off to a relatively strong start getting that Zoroark, but the question is, will he be able to follow through with it? He's going to be Colressing for 9 cards. That's 1 card for each benched Pokemon in play total. With Skyfields, that can be up to 16 cards. But right now, 9's pretty good, and that gives him some pretty strong odds to be able to knock out this dark, weak Oricorio.
Right. So all he really needs at this point is going to be the double colorless energy to be able to take that knockout and everything here. But Colress should be able to net him that. He does have access to the trade as well. Overall, already this hand is looking much better and this game is looking much better for James. He's got the first Zoroark GX out. He drew a Pokemon communication there, so he should be able to get out a second one. I saw the double colorless energy as well, so he's going to be able to even take the first prize if he wants.
Okay, and so we've got that fresh hand right there. Actually, there are a lot of advantages to being able to get that prize, even though it might not help as much, because it can at least advance James's position. He not have quite as much pressure to knock something out later on in the game, and if Isaiah does something like respond KO the Zoroark with a non-EX Pokemon, be like, okay, that's not too big of a deal because he can just respond with his own non-EX.
Right. So James does. It looks like he's battle compressoring away the execute. He's got a couple cards left to be able to choose. Was that Karen is not really going to be too useful in this matchup. Don't really see it ever getting played. I don't like the Oricorio. I'm a bigger fan of the Oricorio in these decks because at least it's a basic Pokemon that you know you'll be able to use in a lot of your matchups. But Oricorio Execute does already come out of the discard pile for that first Ultra Ball. Ranger hitting the discard pile, so 2 of his probably most dead cards in the matchup, the Karen and the Ranger, are gone, so he doesn't have to worry about running into them later.
Although, while the Karen card really isn't that live in the mirror match, where both players are constantly trying to get everything that they need as quickly as they possibly can and in the right, most efficient way possible, it still has some utility with Seismitoad, just not necessarily in this matchup. It's better against some matchups that aren't on stream right now.
Right. And with that as well, he's going to be able to get both of his trades off here using his propagation if he wants. Isaiah is going to be itching to try to follow up with his own Zoroark GX. And James, if Isaiah's able to get a Skyfield, he's actually going to be the first one that's able to take an EX GX knockout if it goes the way that he wants and the cards fall into his lap that he's looking for.
Right, and the exact cards that he would want to fall into play next turn would be the exact combination we've been harping on and on and on about, which would be the 8 benched Pokemon and the double colorless energy, and of course the Zoroark GX itself to be able to do Riotous Beating, or foul play that if he actually ran it like James does. But
right, it looks like he's only got the Mind Jack option in this one here, so Mind Jack won't be doing enough. Excuse me, Mind Jack won't be doing enough damage to his Zoroark GX. But he does already even have the choice band on that Zorua, so he's looking to be in a pretty good spot to take out the Zoroark GX next turn if he wants.
Oh, and we've got this cute little play here with Pokemon Communication shuffling in an Execute. You've seen this a lot of times already. Propagation lets you bring the Execute back to your hand. And the number 1 application of the card in this deck is to be able to repetitively trade the Execute away, bring it back to the hand. Remember, the hand doesn't remember the card's been in place, so it's almost as if it's a new Execute. To do it multiple times, but the special secondary option in this Zoroark deck is to be able to bring it back to automatically activate Pokemon Communication, which needs a Pokemon.
Right. He does end up going for the Mind Jack copy of Zoroark here, which I would have, I really feel like James would have liked to see a double colorless energy on the Zoroark BKT, so that way he doesn't have to worry about sacrificing his Zoroark GX if Isaiah is able to get the cards that he needs.
There goes,
the power of alchemy, so he is already going to be shutting down that roadblock. They are on even fields. All roads are clear for one-hit knockouts for these Zoroark GXs.
That's right, and all roads have been paved with gold. So
we do see, wow, 2 Zoroark GXs coming out of his hand immediately. Looks like we're about to see a Colress for 9. So Isaiah's going to be going into a pretty big hand here. Has 2 trades afterwards, so he's going to go at least 13 cards deep into his deck while looking for things like Skyfield, a couple other bench Pokemon, and that double colorless energy.
That's really incredible, where the longer that the expanded format has gone on, the more sets that have been added, the more that it's grown. There are more of these combinations that allow for being able to draw more cards, allow for longer turns overall, and crazy combinations like this where Isaiah is drawing 9 cards in response to James's 9 cards, and things like 210 damage are actually not that hard to pull off. Where in the base set days, what do we have here?
He's got it. He's got the double colorless. He's got a computer
everything.
search. He's got the basics he needs. He's gonna be able to take a knockout on the Zorak GX if he wants to. This is gonna be the case. And there's a Skyfield, so he doesn't even have to use the computer search this turn if he wants. He can hold it for future turns. This is gonna be a commanding turn once again for Isaiah Williams. He's gonna be able to take out the knockout on this first Zorak GX if he wants. Take a 2-prize lead and put James down to a position where he's not gonna be able to use more than one trade next turn. This is absolutely huge for Isaiah if he ends up pulling off and getting this sequencing right over the course of this turn.
And if he does do all of that, then going back to James's side of the board, everything that's been going on prior to this is going to continue to be an issue where the prize Zorua is fewer cards away. Had he been able to get that Zorua once Roadblock came into play, he might have been able to discard something like the Tapu Lele. And in the same vein, he is going to be with only 2 Zorarks, period, 1 GX, 1 non. He can deal a bunch of damage, and with that Mind Jack in response to Riotous Beating if he's going to go for the one-shot, but that will leave him later on down the line with only fuse 1 Zorak GX in play.
Right. So he's not going to have a lot to be able to do there. Now, James will be able to respond with his own Mind Jack.
Oh, there goes that red card.
The red card, putting James down to 4 cards yet again. He's going to make this as difficult as he can. He knows that he's taking out a double colorless energy this turn. At this point, if James can't find a double colorless energy, he's going to be in such a tough position, but that's all he needs to be able to take a knockout on the Zorak GX, because Isaiah does have the 8 bench Pokemon, which means that Mind Jack is actually doing 250 damage before even having anything like a Choice Band or anything added in play.
That's right. Who would have thought that a non-EX, non-GX Pokemon would be able to do the most damage in the whole deck? But hey, here we are.
Yeah, if your opponent decides to play into it, get that full 8 bench, which really, there's only so much you can do when all of your attackers have to do with something on the bench realistically overall.
But really, can you say that he's actually... Okay, so first off, I was wrong. Apparently, it looks like he's got the 1 Zorua, so he'll be able to chain things a little more easily. But going back to that, I don't even necessarily know if Isaiah is playing into this, but rather he's playing this the way that he wants to, because he knows that this is going to be a knockout, but he still has multiple GXs that are going to be able to be targeted at some point later on as soon as his next turn. Where now James is on a clock, where by running multiple GXs, putting multiple GXs out into play, he's given Isaiah multiple targets. And so despite how long this game has gone on, how long the 2 games have gone on with the multiple trades, the multiple supporters, all the different little things going on each turn, the number of turns have actually been relatively few.
Right, so we do see the Zorua coming down for James. James kind of thinking about this here. He's only got access to 1 trade this turn. He really needs to be able to find this double colorless energy. Double colorless energy, computer search, a double puzzle of time, something to be able to get that double colorless energy in play and take that return knockout with the Mind Jack. Now, if he does, he'll at least have the non-EX GX in play, so it'll force Isaiah to have a Guzma if he wants to be able to take knockout. But with a Colress coming down here, if he is Seeker for a Colress, he's going to be drawing a pretty large hand here. He's going to be going to 12 cards right off the bat, plus the additional 2 cards from trade. So I think he's got a pretty good shot to be able to find the double colorless energy he needs.
Right, although to what end is that actually going to help him, where he has that Tapu Lele active? He's probably, at this point, maybe thinking, oh, maybe I should have tried to... Well, on the plus side, he can always stand in, yeah. Right. So that's always an option, and so we get back to a point where Isaiah is going to have to dig cards himself, assuming that he doesn't have it in his hand already, and if he misses what he needs, then we're back onto an even prize exchange, because a stand-in Mind Jack would be 250 damage. If the next Pokemon knocked out of James's is that stand-in Breakthrough Zoroark, then they are on even prizes, and it's on James's side win the game, and he would become the favorite.
Right. Now, with that being said, though, he does hit the double colorless energy off the Colress, so he is going to be able to take that knockout here if he wants. Isaiah is going to have a lot to be able to follow up with here. Isaiah's got a pretty large hand, so I wouldn't be that shocked if we see the Guzma taking the knockout, but going to be a couple of different ways that it can roll. He is still going to need a couple cards besides just the Guzma to be able to take a knockout on the bench, but definitely a couple different ways that he can pull it off. If he does get double puzzle of time, that'll probably be enough to be able to do it. But it doesn't look like he has any other double colorless energy already in play. So Isaiah's also going to need some DCs of his own. Both players are constantly going to be having to looking for these double colorless energies as they go throughout. Now, what's interesting about Power of Alchemy, the deck is actually, it's very difficult to deck out with these Zorak decks just because you're usually discarding executes for trades. So at any point, if your hand gets too large, your deck gets too small, usually you can just play an N, put everything back to where it needs to be, and then you have plenty of cards back in your deck again. But since you're trading and discarding actual cards and not just the propagated executes over and over again, you're slowly thinning out your deck every single time you trade. So you've got to be careful because eventually you could end up in a position with not a lot of cards in your deck. James does have a copy of Bunnelby even
so he can
if he
always
wants
grow.
to.
That's right. Although the odds of that might be a little remote, where both players are on pretty low prizes. If not by the end of this turn, then definitely by the next. Where James definitely have 3 prizes left after this stand-in and Mind Jack, and if Isaiah is able to respond the way that he'd like to, then he might be a turn away from winning. So the deck out possibility, it's there, and it was a threat from other decks, although maybe not so much here. So we've got an Ultra Ball coming down from James, maybe setting himself up for the next turn and from there on forward.
Right. He does have a double puzzle of time in his hand, so you could actually get another zero out this turn if he wants. Had a couple of different ways that he pulls off. Interesting to see what he does grab off this Ultra Ball, meaning that he did just bench down that zero this turn, so he can't evolve it to Zorak GX just yet. You do need to wait a turn before evolving your Pokemon, of course. But Isaiah waiting patiently, knowing that the Zorak GX at this point, it is pretty clear it's going to be a knockout. He's got everything ready in play, so just kind of waiting for James to see what his last final moves are, what he's going to be doing to try to set himself up, that way that he can have this counteracting battle going back and forth.
All right, and then James goes for the Bunnelby, but not necessarily for any of the niftier little tricks he can pull with it. It's just there to potentially be fodder for Riotous Beating, in the sense that it'll just be a little foot soldier there on the bench to help Zorak GX deal more damage. Not necessarily the main star, but if he has to bring it up for some reason and actually attack, it's kind of a rough play if he had to do that, but it's there.
Right. Now, something I will note as well is that because he actually put that Bunnelby on his bench, he's put himself in a position where he can actually, Isaiah could actually use his own Mind Jack Zorak to knock out something like the Tapu Lele on the bench for 2 prizes. So you've got to be very, very careful in this matchup with how you put your own benches, knowing that both players are always going to have access, of course, to the Mind Jack as well.
And that's so much pressure off of Isaiah if that's the case, because all he would need would be 3 cards. He would need out to Guzma or Guzma itself, need a double colorless energy to attach to that unevolved Zorua on the bench, and a Zorak breakthrough to evolve that Zorua into. And so once he sets up that combination, Guzma up the Tapu Lele, get the knockout, perfect damage, and he'd be only a turn away from winning.
Well, he does actually need a choice band because right now it's only doing 160, so he would still need a choice band.
Right.
He's put himself in a position where it can, of course, make sure that it's definitely a viable option for him. A bottle compressor coming down for Isaiah, though, it's going to put a couple extra cards in there that he knows he's not going to be needing the rest of the match. Pretty confident you're not going to need to bridge it once you get this far in, unless maybe for a little niche play at the end of the game or anything.
Though it's funny that he's discarding that end, because that actually, well, not really by a huge margin, actually increases the odds of that weird deck out scenario happening.
Right. Because he is going to have to use VS Seeker or Puzzle of Time.
Oh, and he attaches the double to the Zorak GX and discards the Ranger. Not really that useful of a card unless your opponent is Quaking Punching you, like he was last game, but that's really not at play here.
Interestingly enough, he's actually got his copy of Field Blower in his hand, so if he's kind of worried about James being able to take some sort of crazy 2 Skyfields last turn, so he could actually just bump the Skyfield here, make it more difficult for him to pull off.
And there goes the Skyfield, so Isaiah looks like he's eyeing that execute on his bench to discard because the Skyfield goes away. Now both players have to go down to 5 if they have more than 5. So we go, and he no longer has that awesome busted Skyfield bench from earlier. Now he's just got a regular normal sized bench.
He does also, a couple different things that could happen here. It's easy to be able to at least take a knockout on the Mind Jack Zorak. We do know that James is holding the double Puzzle of Time, so from Isaiah's side, you would want to see see him play that end that he actually just put in his discard pile. He does have a Via Seeker, so that very well could be the reason that we saw it hit the board. But he does at least get the second Zoroark GX out here, Isaiah. So even if James was able to pull a knockout on his turn on Isaiah's Zoroark GX, he will still have access to it at least one trade on the following turn.
Exactly, but Isaiah is in a bit of a tough spot here because
he does go for that end, though. So James is actually going to go down to 3 cards with only access to one trade. Possibly
all
two
those
due
puzzles
to the
go away. All those puzzles go away. All those combinations go away. And worse still is the fact that he can't propagation. James won't be able to use propagation due to his own power of alchemy. So if all he hits are good cards off of those 3 cards from the end, then he might be in a terrible position where he has to discard valuable resources and potentially miss knockouts later on in the game.
Right. So interesting to see where it goes from here. I mean, this could be a major turning point here for James. James does draw Zoroark GX, though, off of his 3 cards, so he's going to have access to at least 2 trades next turn, which really does help in these kind of situations. You want to get as many Zoroark GXs into the board as you possibly can when these happen.
There goes down the Hex Maniac, but not for its ability. It got discarded for trade. It's important to remember that because I know people on stream sometimes, YouTube comments are like, oh, I saw Hex Maniac. Look at that Hex Maniac. Well, it's not active. It's not in play, so don't worry about it.
Right. Now, James is going to have access to all of his abilities this turn. He chooses to promote the Zoroark GX here, so pretty confident that that's what he's going to be swinging in with. I did not see what his hand consists of. He looks like he's got the double colorless energy. He's got to be. He's also got the other Zoroark GX in his hand as well. But like you said, if the other 2 cards that he hand are good as well, he's going to be discarding something like a double colorless energy or something that you don't normally want to put in the discard pile for trade.
You're right. That power of alchemy might be coming back to bite him here, where he's got a low number of resources. So luckily, though, for him, he had that Ultra Ball to discard for trade. Ultra Ball is just a fetch card, lets you search your deck for more stuff. So now James is trying to dig for other things that are more important. So Ultra Ball is fulfilling its purpose.
Right. He does have a Rescue Stretcher in his hand as well, so that'll be pretty neat. He can grab a Zero out of his discard pile if he needs to, or whatever he feels most comfortable grabbing. Shuffling 3 Pokemon in if he needs as well, to be able to make sure he has enough ammunition if he does end up drawing the Skyfield. But the second Zoroark GX looks like it's probably going to come into play, but he's not 100% sure. I think he's contemplating maybe going for the Mind Jack option with the Rescue Stretcher, because he's really not too sure about putting that Zoroark GX onto the Zorua.
Then it looks like what you have earlier from the Mind Jacks from the past couple of turns, where that might be, well, he's thinking about it. He's definitely flirting with it. He's like, do I want to leave that open? He's like, yes, I do. I want that Zoroark GX out right now because trades are important. Drawing cards is important.
Right.
And the odds are remote to getting exactly what I need, but let's go ahead and discard it. And again, you have the exact same thing, a Hex Maniac on top of the discard pile. That's not actually playing the Hex Maniac, though. That is a Nether trade. So abilities are good for now, unless he decides to be a Seeker and use it.
Now, James did hit a Sycamore, though, off of that trade, so he got kind of exactly what he was looking for. Shaman does hit the bench, so he does have the extra damage coming into play here as well. We see a double color synergy going on the bench.
He's got the Guzma.
So it's going to be a Guzma. Is he going for the Sudowoodo?
Yes.
I believe so he wants to make sure that he has access to his full bench just in case of Power of Alchemy. But then again, he also just knows that he's at 3 prizes, so he's got to take another non-EX GX knockout before he's actually able to win the game.
And so speaking of non-EX GX knockouts, it looks like Isaiah's got himself in a bit of a tight spot where his last turn wasn't that strong. He had a very commanding lead at the beginning, but now it's kind of faded a bit. So he is looking to maybe get back to where he was earlier. So he goes for the trades.
Still feel really confident though on Isaiah right now. He has actually a Skyfield in his hand already. He's got a few basic Pokemon. He actually might be able to pull off a return knockout on the Zoroark GX. So if he's got a VS Seeker as well, he doesn't play anything like teammates that can actually search his deck for things like Puzzle of Time. But if he's able to get one of his choice bands out of his discard pile, he's going to be able to take a knockout on the Zoroark, put himself to 1 prize, and limit James to just 1 trade. So the V-Seeker comes down. I'm not sure if he's playing. It looks like he's playing Chorus. I think he moved it up to the top. So
otherwise, James would be shuffling his hand back in too.
Right. So he's going to be going up to 10 cards. He did not put the Skyfield in play, which is good to note. So Isaiah did not feel confident that he could hit the double Puzzle of Time. But at the same time, if you hit the double puzzle, grab the Skyfield anyways, in addition to that choice band. So Either which way, he knew that his out was going to be able to stop him one way or the other. No reason to put the Skyfield into play and give James the the out that he was looking for.
Now the difficulty in Zoroark GX in general is that sometimes
he's got the double puzzle. He's got double puzzle. Wow. He's got a rescue stretcher. He's got an ultra ball.
Everything he would need.
Absolutely, he's going to be able to take this knockout on the Zoroark GX. That's going to put him in a huge position. Now, don't get me wrong. James could literally still win the game on the following turn,
and he can win off the one card depending on what he gets, because he could discard that card. He could trade. Remember, one of the best things about Isaiah's list is he has so many ways out to shuffling his opponent's hand back in, so many outs to ability lock, but Isaiah has not done ability lock at all this game, I believe. I don't think I've seen a single Hex go down for any reason other than to get traded.
Right. We've only seen the Hex Maniac come out in the first game. Rescue Stretcher is going to grab that Oricorio, so you can see pretty confidently that he's just going to be laying this down. He's going to probably use the puzzles to be able to get the choice band that he needs to take that knockout. Maybe grab another Zorua or something as well. Now, interesting that he did grab that Oricorio, so that makes me think that he's going to be trying to use that to possibly take his final prize. Because if James even has 6 Pokemon in his discard pile, which isn't a lot, that Oricorio can actually use Supernatural Dance and take out the Bunnelby that's sitting there.
So that Bunnelby is a liability right now, possibly.
So he kind of not sure. He's not sure what he wants to grab with his puzzles right now, it looks like.
However, it's still potentially in James's side, because all he would need is that great combination of cards with Skyfield in play, where Isaiah previously discarded a Skyfield Field Blower to limit James's options. Isaiah needs to play the Skyfield in order to score this crucial knockout right now, so James has that tool there, that Stadium card there at his disposal, and so he has fewer cards that he needs to hit.
Right. Skyfield is in play for him, which is pretty good. Now, something to note, though, is Isaiah's actually playing 3 copies of Choice Band. I thought it was only 2, whereas James is only playing the 2 copies. So Isaiah actually still had another Choice Band in his deck that he would have been able to use. But it looks like he's still going to be going for at least 1 from the discard pile, and it looks like he's going to potentially grab that Puzzle of Time in his discard pile, so that when he draws his last puzzle, it is still live, and he's able to grab 2 additional cards, whatever he wants from his discard pile.
That's exactly right. Sometimes you're in a bad situation at the beginning of the game where you have to play a single Puzzle of Time where your hand might be bad. In other cases, you're forced to discard a Puzzle of Time, but by playing that double puzzle and you get the 1 card you need, if there's a Puzzle of Time in your discard pile, you can grab that back and use a double Puzzle of Time later on during the match.
Right. And Isaiah is going to be an interesting spot here. We've only got less than 20 minutes left in this matchup. Isaiah does not want there to be a Game 3. He wants to finish the Series 2-0. He wants to close out his road to get to the finals. There's no Sudowoodo that's going to block it, so he says, this is mine, I want to take it. But if James actually wins this game, they're not going to have a lot of time to finish Game 3. So that's going to really make an impact if they end up going to that situation.
So putting yourself in the shoes of both of these players right now, if James is able to get the win and they go down to a Game 3 with 15 minutes left, if you've been keeping track of things, this is a 75-minute series, lots of time, but still, it's been roughly about 30 minutes a game, so a lot of time elapsed in each game, lots of stuff going on, lots of moving parts. Both players have excellent pace of play, I would say. I think they've both been doing a good job as far as that goes, but at the same time, both players are going to feel a little anxious if they only have 15 minutes to do what they want in 30.
And I want to highlight that VS Seeker there from Isaiah. He just played Puzzle of Time, putting another puzzle in his hand. That signals to James that he has it, of course. James is going to want to play a Getsus at that point if he's not able to take the victory this turn. Isaiah said, well, I know that that's a good option for him, so I'm going to play this VS Seeker now, put Colress in my hand, so if he does choose to get this, I can still Colress for a huge hand and potentially take my last prize either which way. Really just some high-level plays that got him into top 4 in the first place. It's great to see him continuing to use stuff like that to make sure that he advances to the finals of the 2018 Pokemon Regional Championship here in Dallas.
And there goes down James's Execute to add a little bit of damage. Is actually getting relatively close to that return knockout to win the game and take this to Game 3. He has 7 bench
So we need to see a Pokemon, a Choice Band, and a double colorless energy.
Right.
So we see that. Oh, he's got it. There it is. Chelsea choice band. He doesn't even need to use the pulse. He's got everything that he needs.
And he just flashes all of it.
So
and Isaiah scoops.
Yep. So that is going to be a game 3. James Taylor, Isaiah Williams setting at 1-1. Isaiah Williams will start off game 3, having a huge advantage being able to go first, especially with only 16 minutes, 15 by the time we're done setting up in the round. It's going to be really interesting. Now, just to talk a little bit about how time plays out. We are in single elimination rounds. So in Swiss, you can end up with a tie. But because we're in single elimination, there are no possible ways of ending in a tie in any kind of single elimination round.
That's exactly right. There's some really complicated ways that you can resolve unresolved matches in a single elimination environment, but because these players are in the third game, it's actually going to be relatively straightforward. What would happen if this game doesn't finish in the 15 minutes or so that they're going to have left is the active player, the moment the time is called, is going to finish their turn out, and then they're going to do what's called +3, where there will be one turn for his opposing opponent, there will be a second turn for him, and then a third final turn for the opposing opponent, and whoever is ahead in prizes would win the match. That is, whoever would have the fewest prizes remaining. But there's a twist to that if both of them have even prizes, isn't there, Mike?
Right, because then at that point, you're going to keep on playing past those additional 3 turns, and whoever basically takes the next prize at that point will end up being declared the winner of the series. And moving on to the finals of the Dallas Pokemon Regional Championships.
Exactly. Now, you're probably going to be seeing some plays, if that happens, that are relatively awkward. If you were playing an untimed game, you would not make those plays. But because you need prizes desperately, remember, winning the match isn't necessarily about winning a full regulation game. You have to be able to make the best plays relative to the situation. So it's based on the context. It's based on everything around you. It isn't just, oh, well, I'm on this 50-minute single game. No, this isn't 50 minutes. This is less than 15. And with each mulligan, it's going to be even fewer. So he did not have any basics. James did not have any basics. And each single time that happens, it's even more time off the clock.
Right. So, I mean, they're not even going to be at that 15-minute mark. It looks like it's going to be about 14 left when they're finally able to get set up, assuming James is even able to find a basic off these 7 cards. 5, 6, 7.
There's
one more and no basic.
Done
There's
again.
2
mulligans.
mulligans. Isaiah at a major advantage here. He's going to be going first and gets to start with an extra 2 cards. That really may not seem like a whole lot, but it is huge when looking for cards like Bridget, additionals rule, making sure that your first turn is as explosive as you possibly can, knowing that your opponent is likely to block your roads from the following turns with that Sudowoodo. Isaiah's really looking to start off strong here.
Exactly, and nobody can forget that this is a timed environment, so with less than 14 minutes remaining by the time that James draws his hand, Isaiah will not only be going first, he will have more cards, and he will most likely be ahead on prizes. So if he is ahead on prizes, then that means that there's going to be a situation where ultimately we're going to be in a very, very tight spot for James and a very good spot for Isaiah when time is called. I don't even think it's a question of if, but when it gets called. So whatever the prize situation is, that's how the game's going to end.
I mean, both players, high level, they know what they're doing, and it looks like actually there was a small time discrepancy at the beginning because we're actually under 12 minutes at this point. So we've got everything.
Oh, and we got the Getsus. That's a really cheeky play for the beginning of the game where normally people try to go.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
that was incredible. So because he looked at that hand, he sees that all he has is a Colress. So Isaiah's going to keep his bench low, something that's a little bit different from the usual opening hand. He's going to be putting himself in a position where James really doesn't have anything to do often in his first turn.
It would essentially be a dead hand, assuming that he's able to get the knockout on the Zorua and that James doesn't draw anything additional. I actually really like that Getsus play in a lot of ways in this really close, timed environment where Isaiah's thinking, I want to be able to lock this up. I don't want to worry about something weird happening in tying. And on top of that, I've got some pretty good cards thanks to the mulligans anyways, so he has less pressure on him to play Bridget.
Exactly. So because of that, he doesn't even have to worry. Let's say, I mean, the Getsus only really drew him 2 additional cards, but he already had 2 extra cards, so it's been 4 that he's gotten to draw that he would have otherwise.
Yeah, and he started with 2 Zorua, too.
Right. Battle Compressor does come down from 2 of the executes in the discard pile. Isaiah setting up, ready to ramp up and turn this game up a notch for the following turn. James is going to be living right off that top deck. Now, if he doesn't draw anything useful, is he going to Colress for 2?
What is that next card? Was that anything helpful? Is that anything helpful, Mike? I want to see. I think James is hiding that card from us.
It doesn't look like it's going to be something helpful. I feel like it would have hit the table immediately. I feel like he's got to Colress for 2. He has to.
This is the downside of running Colress in your deck. It is an incredible card, don't get me wrong. However, when you start with it as your only supporter in your hand and nobody has that many benched Pokemon in play, then you are basically living off of almost nothing.
You know, John, a moment ago you said, when we come to time, we may not go to time.
I think I might be wrong. I'm totally comfortable being corrected. I am willing to admit when I'm wrong, and if we're in a spot where James just loses both of his Pokemon 2 turns in a row, then I'll admit it.
These have got to be some miracle 2 cards.
But we have a Shaman out in that hand.
Okay, so he does at least... His hand is live.
And we have Sycamore.
Right. His hand has cards that he can play the following turn, but it's still going to be scary because James is going to have nothing but that Alolan Grimer on the bench. So he's still going to be coming back from so much. It's not going to be 2 turns, but... it's going to be very, very difficult for James to come back from this.
And the name of the game with Isaiah Williams' list here is to chain those Hex Maniacs, assuming that he has enough of a setup. So there are a lot of really helpful things here that James would like to do, but he can't do. And so because Isaiah is playing that Hex, it's not only going to help him get closer to an overall win, it helps him in a timed environment too, because whatever setup James does to respond to this will take a lot more time, and it will in turn be a lot harder to catch up to Isaiah's lead.
Right. I mean, we're looking at 8 minutes now, almost. Another Battle Compressor coming down for Isaiah, so he's just going to be dumping everything into his discard pile that he doesn't want. He's going to have all of the executes that he's going to need in his discard pile. Like you said, that Hex Maniac is about to come down, so James is going to be forced to Sycamore without even really playing that Ultra Ball, because he's not really going to be able to use it to grab Shaman or anything if that Hex Maniac does come down for Isaiah.
There goes the Hex Maniac, and I got to tell you, with all the different decks I've seen, with all the incredible players we've seen over this weekend, I think one of the most exciting things we have would be this mirror match.
Right.
These plays coming down to the wire in 75 minutes. That is generous relative to the rest of the schedule over this tournament, with 50 minutes best 2 out of 3 during the regulation rounds. And it looks like James didn't get much of anything to work with.
Yeah, he didn't even get a second Zorua. So Isaiah, if he's able to put a Guzma into his hand somehow, he's going to be able to take out the one Zorua that he does have, and he's just going to keep putting that pressure down. James is going to be forced to be attacking with Energy Drive off of his Tapu Lele. That's all he's going to have access to.
Hey, there's always getting heads on Super Poison Breath, so you can maybe get an extra damage counter on that Zoroark GX, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, hey, you never know. It is a 0 energy attack, so he doesn't even have to actually commit any energy to it. I mean, I would almost... I don't know. You almost want to promote the Zero and try to paralyze and gaze. I don't know.
Okay, so got a couple discards for the Battle Compressor. Obviously, the Execute is going down because it's something that he could potentially get back later on in the game. He's also thinning out his deck a little bit. But if I am in James's shoes, I am wanting to make these plays a lot quicker.
I really feel like he
even
needs
at the risk of misplaying, I think that it helps to make those plays a lot quicker, where if you are conscious of time, and you know what, going into one of these matches, I bet you can very easily feel, I know I felt it before, oh, 75 minutes, that's a lot of time, that's no problem at all. And then when you're playing, just time flies by.
Right. I mean, this is just incredible. This is going to be a crazy turn, crazy last couple games. He's got the Guzma in hand. I see it there. He put it up to the top. He knew it was going to be coming into play. He's got the second double colorless energy that he needs. That Zorua is not going to be lasting another turn. And, I mean, this is just incredible from Isaiah's side, just putting the pressure down, saying, James, you did not get the best start. I am going to make sure that it stays that way. And he is just going to keep that pressure going. He really is beating him into submission here with those riotous beatings.
So, 6 minutes left, and you have the option to either to Guzma up that Zorua, knock it out, deprive James of ever getting that attacker, or Hex Maniac chaining and keeping the abilities off the board. Which do you go for?
I feel like you go with the Zorua, just because you've got the Sudowoodo on the bench, so Roadblock is in play. Sure, you can get the Grimer, you know, you can get him a little muck out, but if he gets the little muck out, that's going to shut off his Shamans and his Lele's, which was primarily the things you'd want with the with the Hex Maniac anyways, if the Zero's not even in play. And he's just really not going to be able to do much. And we even have a red card to top it off. Isaiah says, why not? Let's put you down to 4 cards on top of me taking out your Zorua. So he's putting him back in the position of his Lone Grimer, 4-card hand, Isaiah up 2 prizes, 5.5 minutes left on the clock. Sure, he hits a Via Seeker for the Sycamore, but I'm just thinking it's too little too late. I don't really see James being able to make a comeback from this at all.
Although I think if James has a chance, if that's the thing that James has to be playing from, with only 5 minutes left, there is still a small chance that he can pull this out. He has to do it either, he most likely has to do it through the rules of unresolved match play, if he is able to do it.
Right.
So the little chances that he has is involving getting Zorua back into play, Zorua surviving, and then getting multiple prizes, multiple turns in a row. So
Right.
a knockout on, say, Shaman, something cheap, and maybe a knockout on Tapu Lele later. It's tough, especially considering that he has just a single Alolan Grimer and cards.
Yeah, I mean, it really has got to be intimidating on his side. He's just the little Grimer just sitting there staring at these Zoroarks. Just, what did he ever do? He really didn't, he didn't mean to hurt anybody. But it's just not going good for James here at all. You make it to the top 4. You got to be pretty confident. You got to be on top of the world. But this is just where it starts unraveling a little bit, and you got to be frustrated there if James' position. If you are going to lose, this isn't how you want to go with.
But the roadblock is actually going to work against James here, because one of those tiny little outs that he might have had to be able to tie up on prizes with time dwindling away is gone. So he's going to be needing to look for something a little bit bigger. Not necessarily sure if that's the right play or the wrong play one way or the other, but we can definitely say that it's going to be a lot harder to win on time.
Right. I mean, Isaiah's going to be up 3 prizes at the start of this turn. James is really going to need to put the gas on, and he's got to start moving quick. If he just keeps moving at this same pace, it's not going to go well for him. He's got to move a lot faster if he wants a chance to make it to the finals.
Although, in James's favor, once we hit the end of time, those turns, while they're still subject to the rules of the penalty guidelines or subject to the rules of the time guidelines for making actions and things like that, he won't have as much pressure on him, because there will no longer be a clock going down. It will just simply be up turn 1, up turn 2, up turn 3.
Right. So at the very least, you won't have to worry about that. But Isaiah's going down to 3 prizes here. It's going to be difficult. James is going to have less than 3 minutes. He's going to have effectively 2 minutes to take enough prizes, or put himself in a position to take enough prizes on those last final turns of the game, while also denying Isaiah from getting any future prizes. Isaiah's got 3 Zoroark GXs in play. All 3 of them have double colorless energies on them.
It's just a commanding lead. It really is. It's just a very tough spot for James right now. Now, I will say that when you're in Isaiah's shoes, you want to be making sure that you're making all the best plays that you can, because there is maybe a little bit of time concern on your own end, where if you know that your opponent has a small but decent possibility of maybe pulling out a comeback, some sort of surprise win, then the player might be a little more prone to be flustered. But Isaiah's like, nope, I'm going to go ahead and be careful about this. I'm going to be respectful to my opponent. I'm going to take lively actions, but I'm going to be careful about them. I'm going to be considerate, and that's the best thing you can possibly ask of a player, is lively but well-executed plays.
Exactly. Now, from James' side, I got to point out, so Isaiah did have that Guzma there. He decided not to even bother with the Sudowoodo. He wanted to take out the Alolan Grimer, because he knew at this point, Isaiah doesn't need to worry about one-shotting any Zoroarks or anything like that. He just wants to make sure that James doesn't have the possibility of having this explosive turn.
This is a really rough situation for James, because if all he is going to do is N, then he's basically going to be falling behind 4 or 5 prizes before the end of time. So might be a possibility where we're both right, where the game would not be resolved by the time time's called, but we would still have a clear winner.
Right. We will see. We will see.
Less than a
Just
minute.
a couple
We'll see
laughs.
really soon.
Very soon. I mean, I think the moment time's called, we may even see a hand across the table because it's going to be going quick. Isaiah's going to take another prize on this following turn. I don't really think that there's going to be much that James can do to stop that. You know, James is going to go to new 6 cards here. Isaiah will be only at 3, but Isaiah has 3 trade-ins to work with. James has 2, so they're going to be able to both dig a little bit into their decks, but
and he has, he has all those outs to Hex Maniac too, where not only does he run 2 copies of Hex, he runs 4 VS Seeker, he runs 4 Puzzle of Time, so that's upwards to what, 10 pieces of Hex Maniac if you wanted to?
Absolutely. Definitely plenty of different ways to be able to get the actual Hex Maniacs into play, just to stop him slow him down, because every time he plays the Hex Maniac, it means that James, it's almost guaranteed to not take a knockout of EXGX.
We're just about at the point where time is about to be called, and it will most likely be called on James's side. There, 3, 2, 1, and there it is.
Time.
So unless there's some sort of potential difference between the board and us,
James says there is not. He's extending that hand.
Oh, it looks like it, but he's maybe giving it a little bit of thought, unless there's something going on off the screen that we don't know.
He's thinking about it, but he's just realized, he says, that's it. Isaiah Williams, let's have it, guys. He is our first official finalist here at the Dallas Regional Championships. We'll be back in a moment with that interview, but oh my gosh, that was absolutely